Okay, it's 1 o'clock. So we start our meeting. So we'll have our opening karakia. So everyone want to join in. Whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, ki e mā, kina kina ki uta, ki e mā, taratara ki tai, he hiki ana a te kura, he tio, he huka, he hu, tihei moriora. Okay, welcome to our meeting. Any apologies? Nope. Oh, that's right. Megan is an apology. And so can I have I'll move that. Can I have a seconder? Sam. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Identification of extraordinary business. Anyone got anything extraordinary they want to say? Nope. Okay, next item, conflicts of interest. Any new conflicts? Nope. And terms of reference, that's just for information only. No one's got anything they want to bring up on that, assume. So we go into confirmation of the minutes. Can I have someone to move those? Thank you, Lydia. A seconder. Thank you, Elizabeth. Is there anyone who wants to make any comments on it? Lydia.
My comments were just a couple of questions around the actions that are attached to that. And so I just, under the budget clarification, where I asked the question
So what page are you looking at?
Sorry? Oh, sorry, page 15 of Diligent.
Yep.
I wanted to know the budgets that were associated for community facilities and reserves. And I'm just noting the comment here that it is the Open Space Asset Management team have a carbon audit underway. I was just wondering if there's any more clarification around what is involved in that.
Thank you. Just waiting.
Sure.
Staff members sitting at the table.
So, yeah, they are undertaking a carbon audit and reduction outlines or reduction strategies. So they're basically looking at anything that covers within reserves, whether that's cord with the mowers, diesel usage is going to be most of this, but then also lighting that are in reserves. They're collating all of that into one report and then outlining a strategy that they're working on at how to mitigate some of these effects. It's still in a work in progress at the moment, so there hasn't been an outcome yet, but in the coming weeks that should be completed.
Cool. And I just had one more. It was around the decarbonisation fund. So noting that we had budget for it this year, but we're not implementing that. So are we looking at a budget rollover? Is that compounding, or are we not going to take funding for that
You want to speak to that?
next year?
Thanks, Lydia, for that question. So there has been some confusion around that fund and around whether there actually were budgets available or not. Well, it actually hasn't showed up in spreadsheets and that sort of thing that we've got. And I guess it was probably indicative of the length of time between when Keith finished his role and when Joseph started. And so we note that it was noted in the emissions reduction plan, but we actually haven't been able to really find anything concrete that shows that it actually has existed and was planned for in the budgets. Now, I also had emailed Alison Snedden about it, and because there had been some discussion with her and Keith and Tim, but we just haven't quite got to the bottom of that yet. So we'll come back and report on that. But we don't have, I can confirm we don't have budget in this current financial year for that.
So I just wonder, Chair, how we go about that, because I don't see any other scheduled meetings for climate change and sustainability in our diaries leading up to end of training. So I just want to make sure this stuff isn't lost.
Yep, no, good question. And Steve can speak to, because we are looking at having another meeting. You speak to
Yeah, I think, thank you, Councillor. Look, what the team have identified is that it hasn't made our current budgets, and following this action, our action out of this meeting and from your subsequent question was that this will be factored into the upcoming annual plan budget, and it will be the decision of the incoming council to then decide if they want to then carry that forward for consultation with the community.
Very well. So we will still, this will still stay on.
Yeah,
This
this
committee-
action will carry through to the new council, because it is within the existing plan, and we will want to then bring that back for a decision to then take that for consultation.
Okay. And please tell me if I'm out of scope in this, but our tree policy, are we going to have another meeting or where that will be addressed? Or
Yep, that's coming up. Sorry.
Okay, cool.
It's a good
I will
question.
hold the thought.
That is,
And I'll hold the thought.
yeah. And this is how I said before, there is going to be we're looking to have another meeting for that exact point. Did you want to go to that? Just go to that now, since it's segue. Muscle.
I've had a question over this.
Okay, you've just put. Yep.
Sorry, Joe, you've just left the table. So the decarbonisation fund, was that the work that, I've forgotten his name, the previous guy was doing? Did he give a list of how he was wanting to work towards spending that? Because it says here to establish a grant to support the business in the community. So is that funding that's in the community grants funding, that's a separate, like a green fund that you're talking about, or are we talking about council using that for solar panels and things? So some clarification around what those spendings are looking to be.
Thanks, Councillor Elizabeth. We really don't have that clarification. I'm sorry. We've got very little to work with on it, with what the intent of the fund was, whether it's a community-facing fund or whether it's something that we would use internally on our own buildings. So wish we could give you more clarity on that. But
And I think, thanks, Andy, you're absolutely right. Because we don't have that clarification, that's one of the things that the team are going to take forward from this point into the consultation on our next annual plan, because then we can put in front of both the council and the community how we might then look to utilise that fund if it is established, so we do have that criteria in play.
I was just going to say as well that you'll see in Joe's report that he has suggested some slight changes to the wording in the emissions reduction plan to account for largely to be determined rather than, which is what we are going to have to do. So.
Cool, thank you. So, do we do a vote on? Just the minutes. Yeah. So we've done. Did we do a mover and a seconder for that already? That's what I thought. So all those in favour to accept the minutes, say aye. Against? Carried. So now do my chairperson's report. Sorry, I was a bit late getting that out, so hopefully you've all received that. Just generally what, as you would have seen from previous reports that I do, just what I've seen relevant to the committee and some consultations that are going on. There's one with MFF and plus upcoming events. So Christchurch Conversations they're having, which is always very good to go and listen to. One of those coming up next week and at Tūronga. Lincoln Enviro Trust has got, and of course the plant out days that are coming up with Te Ara Kakariki. And 22nd of September is World Car Free Day. We were looking at this last year. Unfortunately, that was on a Saturday, but this year it is, I forget which, so they're Monday or Tuesday, and whether there's something want to look at with doing something for that. So just putting it out there. Anyway, has anyone got any questions, comments? You do? Do you have a question? No? You want to say something?
Yep, I did.
Sorry.
Just when we're talking about events, there is an event in Glen Tunnel this Sunday from 1 till 3, and it's a predator-free launch.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, with the Upper Waikirikiri Catchment Collective has partnered with Glen Tunnel School, and so we have Sam the Trap Man. I don't know if anyone's aware of him, but he was recently on Country Calendar, and he's coming as our guest speaker for that launch. So,
Excellent.
yeah, great way to partner together and do work in the community.
Very good. Thank you. Anyone else got any comments they want to? Oh, yes. Steve, please.
Yeah, thank you. And this catches up to your question, Lydia, about tree
Yes.
management. I've got the team here that can help just give a little bit more context. So you'll recall back in late 2024, we undertook some consultation with our community to understand the views of how our trees play a role in our community. We looked at 4 sections around planting and tree cover, caring for our trees, tree removal and replacement, and retaining and working around trees. I think with the current challenges being faced through a range of things, both including the rate of development here, but also the changing impacts of our climate, we know that our trees do play a key role in cooling through shade, providing habitat for biodiversity, and also managing stormwater. So they've got multiple functions. What we've identified is that as an organisation, as a council, we're looking for better direction around how we proactively manage trees, especially in a fast-paced growth district like ours. How do we look after them? How do we put them in the right place for the right job? And so the team can just summarise quickly what the feedback was, and then our plan with Trish to talk to you about how we might bring this back, whether this is to a council briefing in August or to we call another meeting of this committee just to talk about this issue. We'd be keen to get your guidance on that. But Ben, do you want to just touch on the summary of the feedback and what the next steps are looking like?
Yeah, thanks, Steve. Thanks for that. Yeah. So the key, first of all, coordinated, obviously, to match the topic of trees.
That's very good.
Yes. So the feedback covered that people do want to see more trees, and that whilst they like trees on their street, it's still a bit split in terms of if they want that delivered there, and so that's part of what we need to tackle as we develop an approach to this. They agree that we need to do more to be maintaining our trees, and that removal should be considered like a last resort, and that people also want to know more and be engaged more on how trees are removed or planted, I guess. There's also space for people to provide commentary. So lots of people talked about the benefits of trees on the ecosystem in general, as well as the shading and the visual appeal of them. People talked about Christchurch having that garden city kind of idea, and something that Selwyn could look into, not to copy that, but to try and add to our story about trees as well. And so that is especially around trying to get trees in our urban areas, and people are open to considering incentives to be able to get those trees in those spaces, especially as we are trying to ask to have higher intensification areas, and that requires more buildings, and so there's less space for trees, so it's trying to make sure that we can try and balance those things together. So generally the approach to develop a policy and other direction for the council was to kind of recognise the value of our trees in the works that we do, especially in our infrastructure and our subdivision work and our major projects. Having a goal of replacing one with at least two, and kind of looking to improve our canopy cover, especially when we're doing some key projects, and that the removal of the trees kind of as our last resort. So that's kind of the consultation and the framework that we've been using to kind of develop a plan of attack. So the goal would be to come back to you in August, if that's possible, in whatever meeting is suits, and sort of talk through the development of a policy or and also all the other kind of work that Mason does around trees and trying to get these ideas embedded into some of the work that we're doing.
Very good, thank you.
So, Mason, sorry.
Mason, is there anything you wanted to add?
No, that was pretty well summarised.
Thank you, mate.
Yeah.
So we've got the option to either constitute another committee meeting in August to bring this back, or to run this as a briefing. We've worked around the structure of what this policy would actually look like, and it is a very operational policy. We recognise it's important though, and you want some awareness on that. So it's to what degree does an endorsement or a briefing do, and we think awareness is probably the key one. You want to know that we're doing something with the feedback we've received, that we've established a policy, it would be signed off by ELT, and essentially that policy would then be given effect to through reserve management plans and other capital project plans, and that would be management's job to then make sure that those things are changed. So that would be the intent. So we think either a briefing or a meeting of this committee would be okay, but there's not a lot of other subject items for a committee meeting, so it'll be up to you whether or not you want to call that. We can bring a briefing back. There is a briefing on the 27th of August, and that is what we're currently targeting, unless you would like a separate committee meeting for that.
And that would be of the whole council, so they would all have eyes over it, and I just wonder whether that would be a better way to go. So I'm interested in what others' opinions are on that.
Are you wanting some direction from us today, or are you wanting to wait until we come back again for a briefing and then we talk through more deeply with everyone?
I guess the key is around how much say you would rather. Like the briefing allows us to kind of acknowledge it in a workshop space to say that we are doing work, but a subcommittee could look at trying to endorse something if that's something that so it's probably your steer on terms of how level of that to tell us what meeting it would be.
So personally for me, this is something that I've been requesting for quite some time. So I would like to see, my preference is to go to the briefing where it's the whole council who's involved, who can give the feedback, bearing in mind that pretty much the end of this term is coming up very quick, and there's a lack of opportunities to have more other options apart from whether Steve has suggested having another meeting of this committee. But as I've already said, I think that actually the wider council, this should be something that they're involved with, considering on the time frames that we have available. So did you have something you wanted to add, Elizabeth? Because you've still got your mic.
No. So would you like some more direction from us today for what you bring back to that briefing? Or some ideas around that, because there's definitely some specific things that I would like to see in this tree policy.
That could be a useful for in that briefing to be able to get that feedback on top of how we've started to shape it up on those directions that we kind of outlined.
So you don't want to hear from me today. You want to wait till the briefing and then we give you feedback then. That's what you're saying.
I'm happy to. We could do both as well.
So do you have a
ideas?
list of things that you want to bring up,
Yeah, I think, and they're things that are raised in the past, so they won't be new to you, but I think we often focus on the above ground, but I think the below ground for me is really huge. We are removing a lot of trees because of tree root issues, and this is where I've said, what about permeable spaces, where we're actually looking at what's available in 2025 for permeable spaces so that we aren't uplifting trees based on root issues, right? Whether it's a car parks or anything else, and we find ways to. And you see that's available. We know that technology is available and used. Why are we not implementing it at the moment? Why are we? Is there a cost factor? I think it would be nice to have more of a conversation around what that looks like, the differences in costs, and how that works, and whether we can start actually implementing it, because we've talked about it, but we're not actually seeing it happen in the moment. We're cutting down all the trees in Lincoln as we do this work, but we should really, if we're going to be endorsing a policy like this, we should be leading this area to do better.
Just, Elizabeth, just on that, with the tree replacement that we're doing in Lincoln, Mason, do you want to speak to some of what Elizabeth's brought up? My understanding, so basically we're taking out five trees and putting in 50 trees in its place.
So just to respond to your first question, Councillor Elizabeth, about protecting the root structure of trees during construction, that's actually covered in the new policy. So working around and retaining trees, it's in the section in the new policy. And the trees that are being installed, the larger grade trees that are being installed in the plaza and the Lincoln Town Centre upgrade will have a special strata vault, which is an underground available root volume space the tree can actually grow into, rather than having a push between the foundation and the surface treatment, which causes all the root heave. So it's like a pre-prepared area for the roots to grow into over time to minimise damage to infrastructure.
But I get. What I was referencing actually existing mature trees, and instead of digging them up and saying, well, we need to remove these roots so we can come in and concrete them, how we can implement paving and things, because we've talked about tree-lined streets, widening footpaths, and then ripping out all the trees that we've already planted down the street so we can put a wide footpath in. Those kind of things where I'm like, when are we going to start implementing solutions for existing trees? So we're working with existing tree roots.
Yeah. I think we can certainly respond to that feedback around the challenge of managing existing in situ trees. Certainly, I think that's the guidance we were looking for today. We won't be able to solve that today.
No. Yeah. I'm just giving them suggestions of what I'd like to see. Cool. I think you did ask me for the list.
That's actually been done in places. I know definitely corner of Lowe's and Springston Rolliston Road, that big tree there has got paving underneath it, as opposed to having just a footpath that's been put in so it can move.
I think that highlights one of the key things that we're seeing and the challenges that we're facing as a community, and so that's kind of one of the key directions that this policy is trying to really highlight and provide that direction pathway for our project teams to figure out how to deal with that. And so that was one of the key bits of feedback and the directions outlined, was that we need to be able to say that the removal is kind of the last resort, and that we are trying to work around them rather than kind of just taking them out because we need to put a pathway in. So that's kind of the direction that the policy is going to set, and then trying to then it's the challenge is for Mason to try and work on that and figure out like what's the cost of these, what's the benefit of keeping it, and trying to have that conversation. But the policy allows us to have that conversation, so we're just trying to get to that step.
Sure. And obviously, before we implement the policy, it'd be nice to just understand what those kind of costings are, so we understand that in governance. One of the other things is the situation with deciduous trees. Like, I see a lot of benefit in deciduous trees, but you'll always have somebody who's going to complain about leaf litter. I mean, it's great for worms, but right place, right situation. But will the policy, are you guys also addressing leaf drop and what sort of benefit it is or role it is, and whether right place, that kind of thing? Because I think that's one. And another thing was roundabouts. Some of the locals are complaining about concerns about the maintenance internally of a busy roundabout because we've got plantings in there. So yeah, I'd just like to know more around what we're doing at the moment and what that looks like and it's coming through in that policy.
Yeah, so the policy probably can't like direct every specific circumstance, but the goal for the policy would be make it really clear for us that it is the right tree in the right place and it is serving the right function, and that's then Mason's task is to then, when these projects come in, to look at it and go, actually, this is the right tree here because based on this and this and this, and the policy allows that conversation.
Is the policy also talking about whose role it is for the maintenance and what the expectation is for us?
I think that's really going to staff level things now, asking about who's doing that. We're at a governance level on policy. So are there any other specific
We could
questions?
probably add that to that briefing conversation to talk about those other questions outside of that. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Lydia.
I think, look, I'm happy for this to come back to a briefing. I think that that's the right space to do this, and recognise, Steve, that you said this is quite an operational policy, but I think it is good for us to be aware of what is in that and give some feedback into that. So I guess it's a little bit hard to give feedback on something that I can't see.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I really would like to see that come back.
So, and that's further to Lydia's point. So before that briefing, will we get circulated this policy so we can see it before the...
Yeah, so we'll circulate this the draft policy ahead of time for the briefing. The briefing will be held in public, so the community can engage in the conversation as well. Obviously, briefings we won't be making decisions, but again, we've indicated this is an operational policy, but we'll share with you for awareness of how we're managing the trees and seek your feedback.
Cool. It's good to me.
Very good. So that was just, yeah. So I'll move my report. Do I have a seconder? Lydia, thank you. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, you two. So we're going to the next item on the agenda is talking about some memorandum of understanding between Selwyn District Council and Manaki Whenua. Is there anyone who wants to speak to that? Ben, you.
Yes, I'll briefly talk about this. So Manaki Whenua have got some funding to do some work around AI use, and they've got a project called Harnessing Generative Artificial Intelligence to Inform Nature-Based Adaptation to Climate Change. And so for them, it was them to try and find a partner to do this work that can actually provide some cross benefits. And so we have been working with Manaki Whenua about them developing tools for us to be able to apply in our business. So we're looking at using that as part of our Waikirikiri Katoa Future Selwyn to be able to use AI to kind of generate like future scenarios, and people can kind of put in different kind of parameters, and it uses kind of our local data that they have and we have to build up kind of interesting pictures for us to kind of, and the public to use to try and picture the future. It's a multi-year project, and so we'll just keep catching up with them and developing that and reporting back. But it's an exciting opportunity that we've created there, and it's just for you guys to be aware of that work that's underway with Manaki Whenua.
No, very good. Thank you. You want to ask a question, Elizabeth?
I do. What specifically are we looking at in terms of the adaptation from what? Are we primarily flooding's the one that comes to mind, but are we looking at other scenarios?
Yeah, so they can use a range of data inputs on all kind of climate risks, and you could say, well, what if it looked like lots of flooding or no flooding, or high drought or no drought, or high fire, no fire, or like just kind of those things, and then it uses AI to kind of create these futuristic pictures for us to, just for you to kind of see what it looks like. There was, they did it last year or the year before as part of the Greater Christchurch kind of workshops. A few people here were involved in that, trying to creating some ideas and then getting AI to create pictures. So their main target is to try and figure out how to use AI in embedding it into operational things. And so we're just kind of providing them an opportunity and a scenario for them to kind of apply it to.
And when you say that it'll be available for the public, is this something that the people just go onto our website and there's a link and they can go in there and they'll be able to put in their own address and it'll put in like fire and it'll come up with scenario?
Yeah, so that's it's early days, so we're not sure exactly what it will look like, but those kind of variables they can be able to play with, and then it will kind of start to generate interesting element pictures based on those. So rather than trying to talk about fire risk, you could start to generate imagery that it looks like, so that you can kind of get a better feel for what that may mean when you're dealing with these things that are complex and into the future. So that's the challenge that I've got, is trying to make these images that kind of make sense for those different things. So it's just a tool for us to be able to understand it, and yeah.
Sounds like we need this for our drain mapping.
Maybe I could.
Sounds great. Yeah, drainage.
Well,
Drainage.
drainage, land drainage layer could be part of one of those things, and so all of those kind of data layers we've got, the more information they can get that's specific to Selwyn, then we can get imagery that makes sense for Selwyn rather than kind of those generic images.
Thank you.
Very good, thanks. Anyone else got any other questions for Ben about this?
It's not really a question. I guess it's just a little bit of feedback, and I've just seen this a lot recently when signing MOUs, that we have specific staff members signed up to that, and I wonder whether it should be a position signed up to that, noting that people come and go over that space of time.
We did raise that, but I think for the MOUs they have to have a specific person. Yes, but we added a generic email as well to cover that off.
Yeah, cool.
And that was the same. Yeah, I had that marked as well because George was not here. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Very good. So, did you want to move that, Lydia? Seconder? Sam? All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. So, next one, National Waste Policy Changes. Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, good afternoon. So staff were asked to bring a report to the subcommittee on the impact of the national waste policy changes by the current government. So I've submitted a brief report on that, just quickly skimming the key points. So back in 2022, the government proposals around waste policies were standardising curbside recycling, mandatory curbside recycling in urban areas with a population of over 1,000 people, mandatory curbside food scrap collections in urban areas, data reporting from private recycling providers, and setting performance standards for waste diversion for councils. Only one of those policies was implemented, and that was the standardisation of curbside recycling from February last year. There were minimal changes for Selwyn, mainly around excluding aerosols from the recycling and excluding tea bags and paper and cardboard based products from the organics bins. And so we updated our communications, and our bylaw was amended to give effect to that. The new government cancelled the remaining 4 proposals, which was the compulsory urban curbside recycling, the compulsory curbside food scraps collections, the reporting by private recyclers, and the diversion performance standards for councils. In terms of the impact on Selwyn, really nothing in terms of the curbside recycling, because Selwyn already met the standard. In terms of the mandatory food scraps policy, really an impact on the long-term budgeting, and we'll correct that in the next long-term plan. It would have imposed an organic bin fee on all residents that weren't currently opting into the organic bin service. So we'll see less income as a result of that, but also less expenditure as a result of that, because it's an opt-in service at the moment. without the mandate for compulsory curbside organics, we won't reach the same reduction in CO2 emissions that we would have reached under the mandate. While we still have plans to increase the diversion of organic waste in the district, it's probably just not going to be quite to the same level we would have got under a compulsory system. At the time of it being scrapped, that particular policy, we hadn't undertaken any really sort of detailed operational planning or contract amendments, so it didn't really have any huge impact in that respect. The next policy that was scrapped was the private data reporting from commercial collectors. No real impact on that, other than you can't manage what you don't measure, and so it's a shame that information won't be collected at a national level. And then the last one was the diversion performance standards. So Selwyn currently has a diversion ratio using the government method of calculation of 42%. And we're continuing to work on increasing that, regardless of the removal of those performance standards. And in addition, we've got exceptionally low contamination rates within our recycling. We're actually tracking, as of June, just finished, at 2.1%, I think it is. So there's a paper coming to council later this month talking about our waste minimisation management plan, and some councils are experiencing contamination levels of 25% plus. So that's definitely a good news story. And I guess while maybe some of the impacts weren't too significant for Selwyn, because we're a bit further along in our curbside and refuse and recycling offering than what other councils are, some of these changes would have impacted other councils more significantly in terms of their ability to divert waste. So that's pretty much the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you elaborate on whether I have heard you correctly? That so with not having the compulsory curbside green waste collection, that we're not going to meet our CO2 emission reduction targets. Or did I hear that correctly? And why is that?
Not so much that we wouldn't meet. I'm not sure that there's a target specifically linked
so
to that. It's more that that's one of the few opportunities from a waste perspective we have to reduce our emissions profile. There's really only two. One is get trucks that collect without using fossil fuels in some way, shape or form, or reduce that or to divert more organic waste from landfill. They're really the only two ways that we can influence.
So you are
emissions.
assuming that if people haven't got a green waste bin, then they must be putting that stuff into the rubbish bin.
Look, some people do home composting.
I was what I'm alluding to, because that's what we do.
Yeah.
And I know others do as well. So you wouldn't know how many people are actually doing that. So that's an interest. That's not even something I really thought of that you guys are trying to track, but you don't actually know what people are doing at an individual level.
No, but we run a solid waste analysis protocol audit across the waste stream. So we did that last in 2022, and about 45% of the average waste bin across the district is food waste and garden waste.
Okay.
So there's a huge opportunity to divert additional organic waste from landfill. Obviously, the people that do home composting or have chickens and that sort of thing, it's great. But from the analysis we've done across the waste stream, that's not the case for most.
Okay, no, that's interesting to know, and that's where I was just wondering is where are you coming from when you are looking at that sort of thing, because there is an option that people don't know. You don't know what people are doing.
For sure.
In that regard. Sam, thank you.
Yeah, kia ora, thank you for the report and for sort of closing the loop on what's happening with these pieces and the impacts on us. One of the other bits that gets I guess interest in the change to the way we might collect rubbish and recycling from people is the separation of glass out of our recycling? I know it's not part of the stuff that's mandated and now been removed from here, but are we looking to change, or have we investigated that as an option, and what difference would that make to how we currently deliver the service?
Yeah, it wasn't part of any of those mandates, you're correct, but it is something that is hanging around in the background, so to speak, and it's a conversation that we need to have along with Christchurch and WIMAC, in particular around the sorting facility in Christchurch that we all send our recycling to. So one of the issues at the moment is that the glass that goes into your curbside bin in all of our districts, apart from Ashburton, who have a separate one, and Huranui, it all ends up eroding. It ends up crushed, and we call it downcycled into effectively an aggregate. So you've kind of wasted a perfectly good resource, beautiful clear glass, and you've just rendered it effectively an aggregate in the bottom of a road somewhere. And while it's maybe a slightly better use than landfilling, it's not ideal. If we were to move to a separate glass collection, then that glass could go back to Auckland and up to the furnaces in Auckland and be made into new glass bottles, which would be a much more preferable outcome. And I think it's one of those things that the public probably think is already happening, but that's not the case. We don't make any bones about hiding that, and that's unfortunately the reality that we have with the sorting facility that we've got in Canterbury. Yeah.
Could we actually do some comms around that? I was quite unaware until I heard from you a while back that, now have I got this right, that there's also, with the glass breaking up, it's contaminating the cardboard isn't as good, it can't be used more in other things than what it could be if it wasn't contaminated with glass. My understanding on that right?
Yeah, so some of the paper fibre, they call it fibre processing mills around the world are better equipped to handle fibre that comes from a commingled collection, and other ones can't. And so it does limit the pool of mills that the sorting facility can send the product to, because some will outright refuse to accept material from a commingled collection if it contains glass. But it doesn't seem to present too many issues for us at the moment. But yeah.
And this is from ourselves at home. When I've heard that out, we have just separated out our glass, and we will, when we've got a decent amount, we'll just take it. But it's easy for us to take it to the resource recovery park because we are in Rolleston. But I don't know whether there's something on our website it says about with glass, what happens with glass, and so, if people want to go down the avenue of actually looking at other ways that they could recycle more and have these products used in better ways, is these, you can do your own, separate even more, as opposed to just having everything going in the bin. I don't know if we...
We do have information on the website around what happens to all the different recycling streams, so that I'm sure that should cover off what happens with glass. But yeah, any glass that does go to the recovery park is colour separated, and that goes to Auckland via a third party.
So that one, it does get captured.
The glass at the recovery park does, yeah.
Lydia.
This is just such insightful discussion, actually. Who knew that? Yeah, rubbish could be so interesting.
Hey, I did.
Yeah, yeah. Look, I'll be honest, I'm actually loving it. My question is just in the report here on page 26 in Diligent. It says that staff intend to include a compulsory organics collection service as a potential option to be considered in the updated WMMP action, as a way to increase diversion from landfill and reduce CO2 emissions. And I'm wondering how we go about that when, through the long-term plan, we had some pretty clear feedback that people didn't want that compulsory option because, like Nicole said, there's a lot of people in urban environments that do their own compost, and how we work around what that looks like, because I don't think it is fair that people have to be levied or charged for something that they don't require. Yeah,
I do agree. It's just an option put put in, and we do recognise that in the long-term plan there was a number of submissions against. There was a few for as well, but I guess it's good to put all the options on the table in that situation. Check the feedback's still the same when we go out for public consultation on the plan, and if it doesn't fly, it doesn't fly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And this isn't actually to do with the report, but I'll ask it and Nicole can decide whether it's answered or not. But it's just, I was wondering, since you're in the room, have you got an update on the rural recycling trial?
Mike, please. Sorry.
You mean Darfield?
Putting you on this.
Absolutely.
Putting you on this
Yeah.
spot.
How are we going?
Just getting a response to confirm that our lease is all good with Kiwi Rail. It's just taking some time. Very close. I'm not expecting issues, but I'm not the type of person to count my chickens until I've got it. So we don't want to push go on other things where we spend money until we know for sure there's no hiccups with that side of things. So we've got all the consenting poised, ready to go. We've got everything else poised, ready to go. We're just waiting and chasing. I literally chased it again this morning saying, hey, I'm getting questions. So, yeah, I hope very soon. Yeah,
Cool.
we are pushing it.
Is there anything that we can do to help with that? You or Sharon or...
I just know that the person I'm dealing with is really under the pump, and I just give her nudges when I can without becoming that nuisance factor.
Yep.
Too badly. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Elizabeth.
I was just hoping to ask a few questions. Hopefully they fit in this meeting. So the methane collection at Cape Valley, does that require green waste that's mixed in? That's what I'd heard from somebody, and I just wanted to clarify if there has been some benefits. We're separating the green waste, but there's actually been currently a benefit to having that mixed in with the ordinary waste stream?
Yeah, so in order to generate methane at a landfill, you do need organic waste, and that can include things like paper and cardboard, as well as food waste and garden waste and sludges and things. The Cape Valley landfill is highly engineered and does capture a lot of methane. They have varying suggestions about what that might be, and it is meant to be very high. However, a lot of the landfill proponents will tell you that that's a great thing and that we capture the gas and we convert it into power and put it into the grid. The reality is that 50% of the gas that comes out of Cape Valley is burnt and flared with no benefit whatsoever, because the lines for the last 10 years haven't been of a suitable capacity to cope with the power that they could have generated. So half of it's burned and wasted. The other thing is with putting organics in landfill, as much as you might be told it's an energy park, it's not. It's a really inefficient way to convert organic waste into methane and power. Yeah.
Okay. So battery collections, we've talked about those battery collection points. They've been privately collected, haven't they? And council hasn't. We don't undertake collecting batteries around at different locations, or do we?
You're talking about the collections within the supermarkets and the...
Yeah, that sort of thing, yeah.
Yeah, so we have partnered with Phoenix Group, who have battery collection systems, and we've got those in New World, Rolleston, Lincoln, Darfield Library, and at the Pines Resource Recovery Park. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And what happens to those once we collect them? Are we stockpiling at the moment until we get better technology, or are we shipping them off to be reconstituted overseas?
Yeah, so at the moment they get consolidated in Phoenix's yard in central Christchurch, and from there they've got export permits to send them offshore. They first of all go to Australia, and certain battery chemistries are combined with Australia's and then shipped to South Korea, where they process certain battery chemistries, and other battery chemistries are processed directly in Australia. Some ends up strangely as fertilizers. and others are recycled back into, I believe, batteries in their original components.
Okay. The electric waste truck, how's that ticking along, and what's the electricity use? Is it being cost effective for us?
So with the electric waste truck, it hasn't quite been what anyone would have hoped. So originally it was a truck that was employed on the Christchurch City contract about 10 years ago. I had a little pop up on my LinkedIn showing me in a photo driving around the truck outside the art gallery. They have since retrofitted it with kind of a 1.5 version battery. So there's about 4 tons of batteries on that truck. It has it's a retrofitted standard truck, so it has a bunch of issues associated with it. Requires really specialist gear. Every time the heater for the window breaks, they have to either send it to Auckland or get guys down wearing specialist equipment and suits in order to maintain it and repair it. From what I understand from conversations with our contractor, they're moving away from retrofitting diesel trucks back into electric trucks, and they're going to companies like Scania and Volvo, who are starting to make OEM trucks straight out the factory with fully electric, because and then they'll back those up with all the local service agents. So I understand. I might be talking out of turn, but there's developments in that path. But the one that we have currently doesn't cost council any more than any other collection vehicle. It's just something that our contractor's done.
Okay.
Yeah.
What percentage of the recycling material is currently shipped offshore?
47.9%. No, I'm joking. I don't know that number.
Great. I was impressed. I was so impressed.
47.95. No, I couldn't tell you. We could calculate that based on the audits that they do in terms of the different grades and that and get an approximate, but. Yeah, so glass is a big proportion. It's about 36%. Paper and fibre is all offshore. That's about a similar percentage. So it's your paper, fibre, and plastics go offshore. Aluminium, steel will go offshore depending on who's paying the most, I suspect.
Elizabeth, how many more questions have you got? 'Cause
Just
we've got
one more.
General Q&A.
So we've talked before about Palmerston North City Council's recycling depot in the middle of the township, roughly middle of the township. Are you familiar with that? It's what Sam was talking before about glass mixing with others is creating a problem. They have a very, very well attended, and it's been there since probably when I was born, and it's still operating now, where you turn up and you take your waste, your recycling, and you put your green glass in the green, the black in the black, this is actually brown and brown. So you're doing the sorting at the top level and it goes down the chutes. So it would be very interesting to have a conversation with them, because I've been doing that my whole life and I'm not that young, and to see how that's working for them, because I feel like that's something that we might need based on the conversations we're constantly having.
Elizabeth, we've got that out at Resource at Pines. Is that what you're talking about?
Separate coloured glass. Okay.
Yeah, we've got that already
I might need to do another tour. I think I've only visited the 2 shops.
Okay. If you look to the left, there's a whole lot of different bins for a number of things. Yeah. Thank you, Sharon.
Andrew, I just want to congratulate you on your passion for waste and rubbish, and and it's been a pleasure listening to you and the breadth of knowledge that you have. Actually, what I really wanted to say was to acknowledge that you have put Selwyn forward for the Reconnect project, and you're a finalist in the 2025 Super Idea Awards for LGNZ, and that's about those who think outside of the box and goes, towards a solution that makes a shift in age-old economic, social or environmental problems, and instead of doing things we've always done this way, bringing a new paradigm, and you certainly lead that. So I just want to acknowledge the fact that you've taken the time to put that forward and say well done, and wish you best of luck for next week.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. Thank you, Andrew. Oh, we have to do, so I have a mover for that report. Thanks, Lydia. Seconder, Sam. Thank you. All those in favour, say aye. Say aye. Against. Carried. Thank you. Okay, climate change policy and sustainability policy scenarios. Thank you.
Kia ora. So for this first public report, we're seeking advice or counsel recommendations around the climate change and potentially sustainability policy. So back in May, we presented the amended, or let's just say refreshed, climate change policy, and it was endorsed by the subcommittee. In May, there were a few minor recommendations suggested, which was just around some of the wording shifting from council will to council aims to, or yeah, those types of wording. But anyway, on that first page, so things have slightly changed since then. So we're either seeking full adoption for the climate change policy, which is attached, the reviewed and amended version, which we pretty much workshopped in May with those minor changes that I mentioned. It then sort of come to our attention that the climate change policy had previously been earmarked for retirement based on the fact that climate change and sustainability is mentioned in several policies. And yeah, we can go into that in a bit more detail. Also around developing a sustainability policy or the development of a combined climate change and sustainability policy to cover all work streams and just have one standalone policy that covers off our commitment, or highlights our commitment, I guess, standing above all of our other strategies that mention climate change and sustainability. So, yeah, I provided a bit of background there, how we presented this in May. The climate change policy was originally first adopted in 2020. It hadn't been refreshed since then. We refreshed it this year, presented, and now we can either go either direction. Climate change policy, no climate change policy, sustainability policy, no sustainability policy, or one combined policy, or not.
And this is from my perspective, is looking at, you know, where the level that particular policies are set at, and whether we as a council, if we see that climate change and or sustainability is what we want to show front facing to the community, that we have this policy because this is important to us, and to show as an organisation this is important to the organisation, that it sits up at a particular level. The other side of it is, now that we've had refresh on our policy manual, and these things are now embedded within those policies, but they're sitting more at a staff level on their the way that they're doing their jobs and such like, that is part of how they operate, is being aware of climate change and sustainability. That's my take on what I've been told. So, two different ways of looking at it. In the meantime, since we've actually discussed that, I've looked up just briefly at what Christchurch City have got, and on their website they've got a sustainability policy that they have. I'm not sure where that sits on the level of at the council as such. And this is where asking for feedback on what you guys think. Sam.
Thanks for bringing it to us. I'm not sure if I'm just getting stuck on the language of what we're trying to call things.
Yeah.
And so I don't have a particularly firm view on this. I just actually want to understand what it is we're really asking ourselves to do here. Because sustainability feels like it's a thing that we should have always been doing forever and will always continue to do. Climate change is a real key focus for us to think about, but there's a piece that's kind of come to light as a conversation for the community in the last 30 years, and will continue as long as that stays the focus, but it almost sits within sustainability or sustainable living or whatever we want to call it. And so I wonder, by trying to combine the two, are we watering down what we really mean by sustainability and just focusing on climate change because it's cool to talk about at the moment? Or are we better off having something that has a real strategy behind it rather than just a policy, and it's about sustainably living in Selwyn, which is what we've heard a lot back to us through our long-term plan engagement, that people want to be able to live here in that way. And yes, if you can help me unpack what we're really trying to land here.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam. No, that's great points there. So we are currently at the final draft of a sustainability plan, and climate change is a core section in that, along with waste, along with biodiversity and all the rest of it. So sustainability is council's ethos. There's obviously Waikirikiri could do a future Selwyn, all about sustainability from a growth perspective, let's say, economic development. Every core strategy we have has a strong focus on sustainability from its specific purpose. Most prominently, I would say, the infrastructure strategy. That's got a large section on sustainability from many different aspects, and a large section on climate change, along with our response. So then it leads to the question, is a policy required if our leading strategies mention sustainability and our commitment to action, and climate change and our commitment to action? And that's also where Jodie's here. If we've got any policy specific questions, she's happy to fill in that I might not be able to answer, because I'm not entirely sure where the policy versus the strategy sits and what's above regarding that. But yeah.
And this is where I articulated it very, very well, but it's trying to say, from where I sit and seeing, like from a governance level, whether we think that we want to identify this separately because we are really focused that this is something that we are concerned about, and we want to make sure that this is front of mind as a council on what we are doing. But then, and this is where this has come out of also with how we had the policy manual as it was before and how that was done, and so how it transfers now is quite different as well. So anyway, Lydia.
Yeah, I guess mine's a bit about wording as well, because we talk about sustainability plan, and we had that at our last meeting. And so what is the difference between that and sustainability policy? Because the way I see this at the moment is that we have the climate change policy, and out of that are falling the sustainability plan, emissions reduction plan, and these types of things. That's sort of how I see it. But I think, are we trying to look at this differently? Like, what happens to the sustainability plan? Is that just wrapped into this as a conjoined policy? Are we getting too prescriptive with so much policy and not being able to be flexible in what is happening?
So, this comes back to, like, the climate change one is the case in point. And it took a while to get a climate change policy as being our first one. Like me personally, coming on to council, our climate change policy was put in 2020, expired 2022, and we're still sitting with an expired climate change policy. But with having the whole refresh of that policy manual and different eyes on with someone who's got that background to actually look at all the policies that we've got across the council and then marry that all up, and that makes sense of how things fit together. But for me, there's still certain things that I think the community expects us to front forward, that this as an organisation is important to us, therefore this should sit outside or above or whatever these other policies that are staff policies as opposed to being our policies, if you understand what I'm meaning. That's why and Lydia's obviously, you've got the same sort of idea as what I had.
Well, I thought that climate change policy falls out of future Selwyn. So
Yeah.
if we're talking strategy and future, that is our overarching document. And then I thought these things
and
fall
that's
out
where
of
it's
this.
got the
You know,
different
like it's a
things.
drop down.
Yes.
This is,
No, you're right
and
in
that's
that
probably
regard.
very visual, but
Yeah.
that's sort of how I see this working.
No, that's a good point. You want to speak to Steve?
Yeah, and I think this is one of those really kind of strategic discussions because the first two elements of the recommendation. I think you've given us a pretty good steer today that you see that there is a role for a standalone climate change policy, and I think you've touched on it really well. Is that this is something that the community would expect that we would have a position on climate change and how that governs the way in which this organisation operates. So I think if we could take that direction, that was probably one of the key steers. I think what we've also probably heard today is that you do see that there is a bit of a difference between sustainability and climate change, and that one generally is going to inform the other. They're not joined together. And so it may be how we look at sustainability might be different than how we look at climate change as an organisation. They do all relate and do connect strongly to future Selwyn, but certainly the climate change is something that is really going to strongly govern the way in which we operate. Sustainability is implied in a number of things we do. And we think about that, and I know that you consider that in all the decisions as how sustainable is the decision you're making, and all of the things we do that flow off that. So I think we've got the direction that actually you need a climate change policy, but I think what we probably need to hear is, do you see the need for a standalone sustainability policy? Do you want them combined, or are you happy to leave it as is and just go climate change? Which is essentially getting down to the decision we need you to make, or the guidance we need today.
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I probably disagree with you there, Steve. I actually feel like we need to simplify. I think the community, when we're trawling through our websites looking for multiple different policies that feed into other policies, I think for me, the sustainability policy looks like you're talking here, it gives us the broader context beyond climate change and it brings in all of the factors. And I think it would be nicer to have a policy that is more of an umbrella, overarching policy so that we've got the simplicity. I think we're already, as an organisation, we just got too many cogs in the wheels. And I think that's the direction I'd like to see, is that we have implementation in a much more sort of hands-on approach, which I think a sustainability policy would, bring it down to earth, so to speak.
Sam?
Well, we already have sustainability considerations within our reports. Like sustainability is through everything, and it feels like it already is there through that stuff. The climate piece, from what I heard from you, Nicole, too, it's more about the statement that we're making and the leadership that we're showing, rather than the particular outcomes that that part has through the org. So I just wonder whether having a policy is, I guess, as long as that's if the policy is done in such a way, written in such a way that it's providing that clarity to the community, and that's great. Otherwise, maybe it's not a policy, it's not really what we're looking for, it's some other sort of document that communicates intent. I guess that's what policies do, so that's fine, but it looks a bit different than all the rest of the policies in our organisation.
And this is sort of where I've come to as well. Oh, yeah, good.
Yes, come.
Jodie, our policy guru. Thank you.
Okay, right. I thought I'd let you have the conversation here.
No, it's good to hear what you,
Yeah, so
your
from my
thoughts.
perspective, sort of along with Lydia, there is a point where you don't necessarily have multiple documents, you can consolidate them, you can have very clear statements. So initially, the conversations that were had initially were as part of the LTP with the team that was involved with the sustainability policy was that they were developing a whole bunch of plans that were going to be approved at the council level anyway, which is what the policy kind of is. And those plans essentially would cover, I guess, the content of the policy anyway, or that articulate them in those documents. So in that sense, we weren't losing any of our commitments or our statements. They're just going to be essentially redistributed into different documents that would likely be approved at the same level. So the terminology of policy and plan, essentially they all technically are policy statements in the sense that they communicate a clear and particular position. Plans can be typically more implementation focused, whereas a policy is generally a clear statement of intent or commitment. You can have policy statements within plans that clearly articulate that statement, so you don't lose any of that at all from a policy drafting sense. So from my perspective, whatever you want to, from my perspective, from what I've seen, there is an ability to consolidate our statements more clearly and articulately in fewer documents.
Great.
Thank you. Are you wanting to ask another question, Elizabeth? No? Anyone?
Okay, yeah, I do want to ask a question. So out of the recommendations, of the 4 recommendations based on what you've just told us, which one are you suggesting was fitting with your narrative?
What she suggested, you mean?
Yeah.
Jodie?
Still a little hazy on that.
It'll probably be 2, retirement of the climate change policy and have that content redistributed into, I believe, the plans that are being developed around sustainability.
Great.
Yeah.
So is this able to come back in that briefing as well or not?
Do you want to ask that question a bit louder so everyone can hear?
You mean now? So for that going forward, so we talked about you were here when we were talking about the briefing coming up, that talking about the tree policy and stuff, coming back to that. Is it possible for something to come back to that as well regarding what we just talked about here?
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that question. I think I would say that the nature of this decision would probably warrant coming back to a committee meeting rather than a briefing, because you're actually creating a decision rather than an update.
Sharon?
Yeah, I was just going to say, actually, if it's helpful to the team, what they are asking is that you endorse 2, which is to retire.
Yeah.
And that would be a decision I think that could be made today.
Yeah.
And that is a clear decision with a view that what I've heard, I think, from the team is that they will bring the others actually wrapped up that fits into the overarching strategy of future Selwyn and the policy and plan that falls out of that, and you'll wrap it up to fit under that overarching bracket, yes? So if the chair would consider endorsing 2, that then helps the team, and then whatever they bring back to the briefing.
So in the recommendations we've got, that's Sharon. I was just thinking who's, because Lydia, you were wanting to say something else?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was looking at this and going, in the recommendation, it is point 2, so retirement of the climate change policy, and then 4, support the development of a combined policy.
Yep.
To be clear on what we're agreeing to. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm happy to move that if you like.
Cool. So everyone understands what we're doing. So moving part 2 and part 4. So I've got a mover, a seconder. Thanks, Sam. So all those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Cool. Thank you very much. Thanks, Jodie, for articulating that. So the next one is the ECA Community Resilience Program.
Great. Thanks, everyone. So the next report is around a newly established agreement for a community resilience fund between ECA and Salmon District Council. So in short, this is an agreement that we've signed for funding for solar panels, batteries, inverters and installation from ECA for 5 sites in the district that all fit under a community resilience lens. The purpose of this report is to make everyone aware of what this fund is and sort of share the selection criteria that we will be using to choose some sites in the district. Now, this isn't limited to Selwyn District Council owned assets. So this could be expanded, for example, Taumatu Marae, schools, and other community centres that serve the community, and of course from a resilience perspective, so communities prone to flooding, maybe more isolated communities as well. And yeah, there's significant funding for a good start towards a transition towards renewable and resilient energy with solar and battery storage, of course. Yes, so my kind of proposal for selection is based off of 3 criteria: community resilience, climate risk, and then other co-benefits. I'd just like to point out a minor typo under 3 proposal there on page 39, where I've stated other co-benefits. That should be 20%. And this is just a draft metric that I've created to sort of hash out some of the sites that we could potentially select. That metric or that grid is in the appendix, so that's down on page 43. You'll see a table there, which is roughly how I would select sites. So let's say I have 10 sites in mind. I would run them through such criteria, rank them, and then feed this back to ECA, who ultimately make the final decision. So I'd just like to make it clear, we will not be able to make a decision until ECA have looked at everything I've provided them, and they've said yes, yes, no, yes, and so on. So we're not quite there yet. We've signed the agreement, and now we're moving forwards. The funding as listed, the funding model is also listed in this report, and happy to answer questions on that.
Cool, thank you. Any questions? Sam?
Thank you. This is great. Yeah, really good to hear that we can have ECA backing this, and will make a real difference to communities, particularly as you mentioned, resiliency, but I think just ongoing isolation is. And risk around snowfall. There's all sorts of things that can occur. Mike, just wondering about the criteria that you've set up, and the number 1 says % of community served, and I'm just wondering, is that the % of the Selwyn population served, or is that the % of the local township served, or of the rural farm? Like, how are you weighting that percentage?
What I was looking at, my idea there was % of the local township served. So let's say, for example, Rolleston Community Centre versus Castle Hill Community Hall. There'd be quite a difference there between what percentage of the community could be served from X amount of solar panels. It would be roughly the same amount of energy input to the grid. So that's how that metric would be structured, more around the size of the township.
Okay, so it is proportional. So they stand equal chance of being rated at the same level?
Yes.
If the number, okay.
Yeah.
Yep, thank you.
Lydia?
Yeah, I was just looking at how you rate the criteria. And so, yeah, that was one of my questions, is what does that percentage look like? Some of my other stuff was just, how do you class like exposure? Is that high on the percentage or is it low?
For which particular
if you are looking at
location-based exposure?
Yeah, like
yeah. I'd look at, for example, let's say we were looking at flooding. We'd look at recent flood models and see which township may be more susceptible to flood risk. They would rank slightly higher than a township that isn't. Flooding wouldn't be the only criteria there. It's something that I would need to go into a little bit more granular detail, look at some risk assessments and models, and provide a sort of just a high level score at this stage.
And thank you. And with the final decision on what facilities or what places you are looking to implement this, come back for discussion here, or are we just, or is that operational into just as agreed between yourselves?
Good question. I'm not sure. I would, from my perspective, once I've got a list, let's say of about 10 sites, I would then provide that to ECA, who take it to a board, and then they make the decisions and then feed back whether they accept these sites or not. If they are outside of council assets or within council assets, they'll still provide some feedback there. Let's say a school is selected, schools say, no, we're not interested, or there would have been prior consultation, but if they're not, no worries, we can go to somewhere else. Whether or not it's to be workshopped here, it can be, if that's what everyone would prefer. I'm happy for either way. So.
Joe, just a question in terms of who is the decision maker on the funding. It is ECA. And so what we would probably, our decision or our decision-making ability is probably not contained within this funding. So it'll be more of a briefing than a decision.
And yeah, thank you, Steve. And I would say as well, after conversations with ECA about some concerns I might have about selecting particular sites one over the next, they made it quite clear that we are not making the final call. They are. So yeah, I'm just...
Okay, well, yeah, I think it would just, it would be nice to be kept in the loop of what is going in there. So if that is what comes to a briefing for an update on how that's going forward.
Yeah, I think depending on the timing of this, and I'm mindful of the next 2 to 3 months, we could do an update either through the Chief Executive's report to Council or to a briefing if a time slot is available. So that it is always kept in that public environment. So I think that's what we can take away.
Cool.
Excellent. Thank you. So now Elizabeth, you got another question.
Yeah, thanks. Just following on from what Lydia's saying. I mean, Joe, you're probably reasonably new to the district, and obviously the councillors here are widespread to bring back some information. Is it of benefit? I've got a few questions, by the way. Is it of benefit for you to have that briefing before you send the list to ECA, potentially, so we can say, well, actually, we know that historically, blah, blah, blah. Maybe helps you to identify things that you might not know about, because modelling is one thing, isn't it? Yeah. Are you looking at historical flooding data or future predictive modelling?
It's more from a community, so one criteria when I was in discussions with ECA, which I'll also be speaking with the emergency management team about, is which, say, centres serve as community hubs in the event of a disaster. So that's kind of one core criteria. And you could then argue that sort of any community hall would fit that purpose. But I would say from my perspective, yes, any additional information I can get to support with this selection.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there a minimum from ECA to you? Is there a minimum number of beneficiaries before you would even consider? So we've obviously got some really small communities. Let's say there's 10 families, and 100% of those 10 families would use that little hall. That could put them really high up on the list, but it's probably cheaper to just put solar on their own roofs than it is to kit out a centre. So is there a minimum number of beneficiaries?
Not that ECA have suggested.
Our other question is, if we're looking at using a non-council facility, obviously you're talking about this being a purpose specifically for an emergency event. So is there, to go ahead with this and put the roof on, say, a school, there'd need to be some written agreement that the community will have access to that school in the case of an emergency after hours?
I believe that would probably be something for the school to comment on. It would serve as a community hub as it's a school operations. For example, if it was on, it would be more for the individual site, I would imagine, but I can look into that further. For example, I'm thinking if a marae had solar panel, that wouldn't serve as a...
But the purpose of us putting it here is for, in the case of an emergency, we have an actual facility in which the community gather and are housed. Yeah? So that the point
of
point
the
of that?
purpose.
Steve, speak to that.
So Joe, and just you might be able to add more to what I'm going to add, because I think that might in part go to addressing your concern, Councillor, is that the team are working really closely with our civil defence and emergency management team around this. So from a resilience point of view, I think you're plugging in quite closely to our lawn and our team around where these really top locations of interest are. So they are legitimate community hubs. Joe, can you add any more to that?
I have been working close with Al, and he has seen this ranking metric and was happy with the progress there. But I'll continue to get his support on any selections. I won't be making a decision on my own, feeding back to Ika. It will be a group decision for sure.
But just that's what I'm getting my head around. That whole purpose is community resilience. Is it'll be a 24-hour operational site. Yeah, in the case of an emergency. So that's the whole purpose of having this set up. Yeah.
Providing the solar and battery with limitations of how much there'd be available there.
Sure.
Sorry, Andy.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I guess with our own sites, I mean, we can be largely in control of that conversation, but were the marae or a school to step in, then that would be largely a conversation between them and Ika.
Yep.
In that space, we can't really be in control of that.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. So we have a mover. Someone want to move that report? Elizabeth, a seconder. Sam, all those in favour, say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So, tab 8. Joe, your
Great.
work updates.
Thank you. So, we agreed at the May subcommittee meeting to provide some general work updates, and I will sort of take this as mostly read, and there's a few parts that I'd like to pull out, and particularly it is going back to that decarbonisation fund in the council emissions reduction plan. Now, I know we discussed that at the beginning of this meeting, and thank you to Andy for elaborating on this. I guess now, if there was anything else that we would like to discuss or raise regarding the wording of the decarbonisation fund, if everyone would feel confident with a slight rewording and still leaving that in the final council emissions reduction plan, or to completely remove this wording from the plan itself. My suggestion would be to reword from where it says decarb. So this is on page 44, just at the bottom there, to reword the decarbonisation fund, and then, for example, to have subject to further consultation in brackets, instead of saying establish, aim to establish, remove FY 25-26 and just leave in 26-27. And look, I understand that this hasn't been budgeted at this case, but we will have a clearer picture on that. But the reason I'm asking this is because, again, following up from our last subcommittee meeting, the council emissions reduction plan is complete. It's with comms. We're just waiting on this small section. Once I have clarity on whether to leave this part in or out, I can give them the go ahead. They'll export the final one, and our emissions reduction plan is done.
Has anyone got any question? Oh, Sam.
Just, you said the $200,000 is not currently budgeted.
So that means
I don't think we should put anything in.
no.
We don't have a decarbonisation fund.
Yeah,
If we don't have any funding.
we can't put it in, of course. Yeah.
Does that just mean we just put a line through the whole thing? rather than rewording it, actually, I mean,
I can just remove that whole. I'll just remove it from the table. We had a bit of sort of, it was removed, then added in, then removed, then reworded. So yeah, if that's clear, I'm more
I
than
don't know, I
happy.
just think the whole thing rests on whether you got the money or not. We don't have the money.
Yeah.
So it just seems like we're trying to say something is happening when it's actually not if we were to leave it there. But yeah.
Yeah, if I could just make the point, thanks, Sam. I guess, subject to clarity around exactly where the fund was meant to go to, whether it was community facing, and thinking about the success of our SNEF fund. I guess, I'm not saying let's remove it or not remove it, but maybe it's something we could come back to in the next LTP round, is whether we think there's potential value for something like that could be used and work in a similar way to our SNEF fund, where we can support and engage with our community around, things could be like decarbonisation and that sort of thing in the future. So absolutely agree with you about taking it out now, but I guess also, whether that's something we might pick up in the future as well.
Yeah, I'm completely open to re-looking at it, but it needs the money behind it before I think we can say we've got it. And that's, just for clarity.
Sharon?
Yeah, that's my point in terms of next annual plan or next long-term plan. I would have to wait until that point.
Great, thank you.
Very good. So no more. Lydia, you.
Sorry. We
No,
got
that's
away with
right.
that, didn't we? Do you want to tell me about the energy plan that's happening with the economic development team? Who's the energy plan for? Is it for us as council operations? Is it for people? Is it?
Yeah.
What's that look like?
That's a district energy plan, and actually last Friday, I believe that was workshopped, and that's part of the economic development team's, the economic development strategy. It's listed in there that they will start to develop an energy plan, and it's the initial brief. And Sharon, would you like to?
Thank you for turning off. I should have just gone down to the bottom of the table. It is multifold. So we have there is, as part of the mayoral forum, there's a Canterbury Regional Economic Energy. And in terms of part of our economic development strategy, we are working in partnership with Orion and Lincoln University around energy, and that's feeding up into the regional energy plan as well. So there's a nice compatible relationship going on there. So quite exciting. So the energy plan is through the Economic Development Forum, and there have been guest speakers in to talk to that. But we can bring an update as to what's happening, and it really it's twofold. I think we need to talk about it in the context of the work that's going on at the regional mayor level, and I can share and circulate papers and the inventory and strategy that's been taken place.
Cool.
Great, thank you. So just kind of scrolling down, there's a bit of a work stream clarification there, and then moves down into sort of three main sections where my work lies. Mitigation, which is the sort of energy and emissions management. As I mentioned, now we've got some clarity for that budget line in the emissions reduction plan. That's good, that's all good to go. And soon I will be able to start reporting on improvements that we have made to certain systems, whether it's building energy, whether we have a solar integration. I'll be able to report as frequently as we can, probably quarterly, on these small wins. A recent one, for example, was looking at the LED upgrades throughout the district that went on over the last 5 years or so, and looking at how much have we actually saved in energy and in cost over that time. So these will be little things. I refer to this as an energy management action plan. It won't be another council plan. It will kind of just be a model to constantly update or some live reporting on our progress where it comes to energy, cost and emissions management and reduction. And there's lots of exciting projects going on in this space at the moment. Of course, some of the eco ones that I've mentioned, along with previous ones at other subcommittees, and I'm happy to elaborate more. I'll give a quick update on sustainability. As I know, since I've been here, we've been talking about a completion of a sustainability plan. So thanks to everyone as well for the commentary last subcommittee meeting. That was very helpful. And I do agree that the sort of draft plan at the time wasn't quite as focused on our own ownership. We've got all of these great initiatives and strategies and plans here. And now the plan has been restructured to really take ownership and fully align with Waikirikiri Katua Future Salwin. And the plan itself is done. I'm working just on reworking those goals, targets and actions, again, to instead of, let's say, align with sustainable development goals, to align with Future Salwin and what we're doing here. Now, as we know, sustainability sits sort of above everything. We mentioned earlier how climate change, emissions mitigation, waste all sits underneath sustainability. So these goal targets and actions will be more in-house focused goals to reduce overlap with, say, what the waste team are doing. I'm not going to put direct waste goals in here. It'll be more what can we do in-house to improve just on our general impact for whatever it may be. And I'm happy to, obviously the plan isn't here at the moment where the first draft has just been completed, along with the second version of the draft goals, targets and actions. But happy to, whenever our next subcommittee meeting will be, to give some more updates on there or to potentially workshop that plan there. And as for the adaptation plan, that's still under some further, we're just sort of looking at a direction of how this will go. So the adaptation plan is still in its infancy at the moment. But I guess that's about it. I'll stop talking for now and happy to answer any questions. And yeah.
Cool. Thank you, Joe. Elizabeth.
Oh, yeah. Joe, thanks for that. Page 47, you've got with our goals, targets and actions, we worshipped them during the May subcommittee. I have to say, you made my day reading that.
There we go.
Yeah, no, really cool. And I was looking forward to seeing something around, oh, sorry, it's on the page. It's great how you can lose your spots down the bottom somewhere. Jeepers. Can't find it, but anyway, it was about Rolleston Pool. Some of the work that you're doing.
The Salwin Aquatic Centre.
Yes, at the Salwin Aquatic Centre. Could you just give us a little bit of indication? You're talking about energy savings there and the...
So yeah, that was selected, and in the over this year there'll hopefully be some good, some strong feedback that I'll be able to provide. So that's one of our highest energy users. Now that's for good reason. It doesn't mean that it's poorly performing. There's lots of visitors. Swimming pools are very energy intensive. It's a modern pool. It's actually a very energy efficient and pool, but it doesn't mean that there's not savings that can be made where it uses so much. A small percent saving of say 2 to 5% impacts our annual spend quite significantly and our equivalent emissions. So recently we had an energy audit on the pool. That should be with us, I'm hoping, by the end of this month, if all goes to plan. That will provide suggestions, but we haven't just been waiting for the energy audit to be done. We've been continually looking at this pool itself. It was suggested that the pool have a new power factor corrector and harmonizer installed, which has now been done. Now, what that essentially will do, and again, in one of these energy management action plan or energy reports, I'll be able to give a lot more detail into each one of these savings and such. In short, it cleans up the incoming energy. A pool has lots of pumps and motors always running, lots of AC and humidity control, etc. All of that energy draw means that we can't efficiently utilize all of that incoming energy. And we might have additional lines charges on not using all of the incoming energy as cleanly as we can. With the installation of this harmonizer, what it means is we will utilize a lot more of that incoming energy and reducing additional lines charges. So where it may not directly reduce our energy consumption, it will reduce fixed line charges, and it will also improve pump maintenance and motor maintenance and such like that, because they'll be getting a steady load of energy. Another project is we're analysing the BMS systems, which is the building management system, and we've been in touch with Becca recently. That the guy from Becca who actually designed the extension of the pool, I was in contact with him, and there's a system called B-Tune that we're exploring to use the pool as a pilot project. It's proven with office-style buildings, but they haven't done an aquatic centre yet. But Becca do have a aquatics team that we've had meetings with, and they're looking to progress forward on trialling their software, which essentially sits above our BMS, which is our building management system, which is a computer onboard system to show how everything works. So we have one for HQ. It would show which room has, what's the temperature in there, what's the air conditioning load, what lights are on, and how it's all managed from one system. They would sit above there and manage it from a professional view to look at what potential savings, or let's just say efficiency and optimization approach could be taken. So that's where we're at with the pool. Other explorations are in the works, but that's about it for now.
Sam?
Yesterday we had Minister Watts, who's Minister for Energy here, and he visited the Pines Wastewater Treatment Plant.
Yeah.
He was interested in what we're doing around solar and generating their own electricity. I couldn't point to anything from where I was standing that was generating it on site, and it's probably similar to the question that we've just had, is around the number of sites and the availability of roof space that we have to have these things implemented. Interesting that he came and thought we would be doing some of that. I think we should be doing more of that. So keen to just see this progress. On that note as well, the previous subcommittee, we mentioned a solar case study that I had worked on. I haven't brought it with us this time, but there's a small case study that we can present to highlight the potential for solar in the Selwyn district. Of course, I know there would be more consultation around that, cost, etc. There's various options, whether it's power purchase agreements or just to outright buy the solar, and I could share with what a estimated payback period would be if we were to choose to invest in renewable energy and storage ourselves, and I'm happy to provide more info there. And the wastewater treatment plant is undergoing a large upgrade in the next sort of 3 to 5 years, so there's some good projects that could go on there as well, not just solar based, but around. I could expand, but I won't now.
Thanks, Joe. Lydia?
I'm happy to move the report for information, and in the appendix, I just wanted to support the changes that you had made to the emission reduction plan around
Yes.
biogenic methane statements and excluding agriculture from that. So I support the changes you've made there, Joe. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Sarah, seconder. Sam, all those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. So that's everything that you guys wanted to go through. Thank you. It's been a very good discussion and meeting. So nobody else wants to bring anything else up. So we have our karakia. Everyone join in. Unihia, tapo, kia wātia, ai kia wātia. Cool. Thank you very much. Then the meeting is